Welcome to Rock Solid, the Round Rock Business Leaders Podcast. Join your host, Brian Eisenberg, as he explores the journeys of entrepreneurs and companies across Round Rock, Texas. From startups and nonprofits to large organizations, each guest shares their passion for doing business in this thriving community. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. It's Brian Eisenberg. Welcome to Rock Solid. I am joined today by the Honorable former Judge Bill Gravell. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, it's great to be with you, and it's great to be back in Williamson County, Texas.
Yeah, you've been traveling around a little bit, but I want to start us off because you are born and raised right here, Main Street, Round Rock, and I know you've shared how you grew up playing baseball in the fields that were on Main Street that your dad even built. So tell us a little bit about growing up and what wasn't anything looking like Main Street is today.
Yeah, so I did grow up here in Round Rock and had an amazing childhood here. We grew up at 1402 East Main Street, and from where we lived to downtown Round Rock was a long way, and the only thing on that road was the Lutheran nursing home, and the rest of it was just pastures and fields. And as a kid growing up, community was important. I'll never forget, it's a fun story. The way my family got here was my dad was a milkman for Coronation Milk and was delivering milk in Round Rock, and he delivered milk to Bucky Whitlow's house, Bucky or Bunky, and delivered milk to his house, a local banker. And he said, "Hey, Mr. Gravell, what about living in Georgetown?" And they lived in South Austin in a rent home. And he said, "We could never afford to live in Round Rock." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Do I have a deal for you?" And at that time, there was a builder that had about 12 homes that were foreclosed. And he made my mom and dad an offer that was too good to be true, and that's what brought the Gravell family to Williamson County. One of the local bankers, small businesses, reached out, and our community at that time didn't have a lot. My dad grew up playing baseball, and we wanted to play baseball. And back in those days, my dad would drive his international truck around town, pickup truck, and we would load up as many boys as we could find in the back of the truck without a tailgate and drive at a very high rate of speed, all those things which are unsafe today by state laws. And we'd just find a field or a pasture, and we would practice and play. And at the time, the Lutheran nursing home had a bit of a ball field that was there. And from that point on, my dad, with our family, with several other families, built a little league complex there. And it wasn't the Taj Mahal, but it was a safe place on 2 or 3 nights a week where kids could gather together and just do life. But that's how Round Rock is. In those days, the people just came together to solve problems, and they did.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've had Kevin Coyne here not that long ago, and he talked about his dad being here since like the 1860s in Williamson County, having a farm, 7 years of disasters. And the only way he survived was that community, right? The other farmers would support each other, and they would figure out how to thrive in challenging times.
Right.
We're going through some of that right now here in Williamson County and surrounding areas as well. What is it about this community that helps us kind of overcome these real crazy disasters?
That's a great question in light of the current disasters that have gone on in the region. I want to backtrack if I can for a little bit. So grew up in Round Rock, and my first experience with the disaster was when I was a senior in high school, and our home flooded during the Memorial Day floods. And we lost everything in our home. Didn't have insurance, but we were able to rebuild. I'll never forget the van loads of people from First Baptist Church showing up at the house, and they just kept coming in waves. And I'm going, where are all of these people coming from? Now, that was back in the 80s, but I want to fast forward to a few years ago when I served as county judge. During my time as county judge, I led during disasters, a global pandemic, 4 different tornadoes. unfortunately, a mass casualty shooting and even fires. But I remember just a few years ago in Round Rock, we had significant damage, in my view, from tornadoes.
Yeah.
And
it was on my daughter's birthday. We had everybody in the house, and all the kids were in my storm closet.
Yeah. And so the governor provided DPS 1 for me, and I flew Williamson County. And you know that it's not good 2 or 3 days later when you can count hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of blue tarps on roofs. And I realized that I just couldn't make a difference globally, even though I was the county judge and I wanted to get out and serve. And I showed up for a Saturday serve day that was put on by the city of Round Rock. And just at our location, there might have been 1,000 volunteers there. And it again affirmed for me what makes not only Round Rock, but what makes the region exceptional. Often people look in disasters for the federal government to be their help. But the truth is, I think the greatest help during a time of disaster is your neighbor. And I'm a little selfish. I now represent a 5-state area, and I work for the President of the United States. But I think we do it right in Texas. I think Texans understand what it means to pull up your boots and help your neighbors. And even the last few days with the horrific flooding that's gone on in Central Texas. And Brian, I have to tell you, it's been massive. I've spent some time in Kerrville, and we can talk about it some, but the Small Business Administration of America sets up disaster relief shelters to provide low-interest loans to families that have suffered, and also loans to small businesses that have suffered or lost revenue. In fact, the SBA is the largest lender during a time of disaster, and we go in and partner with FEMA. But even the last few days, what I've seen in Texas just sets us apart. A couple of days ago, I was in Kerrville, just one quick story. But we were at a church that was hosting an organization that I've seen at disasters that I think is exceptional. It's a nonprofit, faith-based organization called Mercy Chefs.
Okay.
And what all they do is prepare meals to go. And it's not like a bologna sandwich or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's a really chef quality meal. But Brian, that day they provided 4,300 meals. And because the volunteers are in the field, the rescuers are still looking for those that are missing, and they don't want to leave their work site. So you have to take the food to them. Who else does that, right? I know other states do it, but in Texas, we had over 2,300 volunteers, aside from the state resources and federal resources that were on the ground. And that's just what we do in Texas. We give.
It's, not being a native Texan, right, coming from New York originally, but just watching, the trucks from HEB roll out, Phil Terry, the lines that were at P. Terry's for people, that he was going to contribute. I think today he announced, he's writing a check for $150,000. And there's countless businesses that have set up for collections, for donations. Again, just those businesses serving our communities. And it's an amazing thing to witness when you know that your neighbors have your back. And I think it's a steady theme that we've heard from guests on the podcast, especially from those in the area, and how they talk about it. And I'm interested from your take as is from the county judge perspective, how the nonprofits work together, how these businesses work together, how the chamber works. Everybody kind of comes together in this community to support each other.
Yeah, it's really interesting. No one's in charge, but yet everybody contributes. And the way the family, I call it the way the family comes together and supports is pretty amazing. A chamber story in Kirk County right now, they're the point person for receiving funds to help small businesses get back up on their feet. And they're really doing an amazing job. But it takes everybody. So early on in a disaster, you have the county resources and the state resources. But then the immediate need of clothes and food or lodging or meals, right? Or electricity for generators. Toothbrushes, right? Where does that come from? That comes from Texans. That comes from people. And I think I want to be careful not to promote one company above another, But I have to tell you, when you see those HEB disaster trucks show up, I will shop at HEB for the rest of my life because of what I see them do for Texans in a time of disaster. And it's kind of funny. We saw them coming in, I guess, down Interstate 10 in Kerrville, and we couldn't figure out what was going on, but cars were following them and honking. I mean, it was almost like a parade entry, a grand entry. And so, but again, they play a small part in that puzzle, right? Then you have places like Mercy Chefs and Samaritan's Purse that are providing the meals and the resources. And then you've got a great organization based here out of Williamson County. Their hub is Celebration Church, but it's Serve, and they literally just use an app, and on that app, it points you to where can you serve today and volunteer. And so one day last week, I was with some of their leaders, and on that day, they had about 880 volunteers in the field. And all it is, Brian, is an app run by some local guys where common people like you and I can get on and really make a difference. I do want to talk about one business, and I don't know the name of this business, which is probably better for this story. We think of all the paid resources that show up in disasters. There was a construction company that sent down bulldozers and cranes and excavators and skid steers. Just, it looked like a fleet of 6 18-wheelers, maybe 8 18-wheelers packed with resources. And they bring their own fuel trucks, and they bring their own mechanics. Nobody asked them to come.
Yep.
They just showed up at their own expense. They'll never get reimbursed for that. They did it because it was the right thing to do and they had the resources to help. That's what makes our communities exceptional here in America.
Rock Solid is produced and recorded at Round Rock Studio. Located right here in Round Rock, our state-of-the-art studio is built for podcasters and creatives alike. We offer multiple professionally designed podcast sets, top-notch recording gear, and a full photography studio ready for any project. Whether you're launching a new podcast or upgrading your existing one, we can help with multi-camera recording, editing, and everything you need for success. Record with us at Round Rock Studio, your local podcasting partner.
I kind of want to get off the disaster a little bit. I want to go to some highlight points before and then I want to dig into a little bit more of your story, how you got where you are today. But you mentioned something. We were at the business leaders morning with the Round Rock Chamber, and you were getting some of the stories about what people were going through, and you mentioned an interesting factoid that has stuck in my head ever since. And you mentioned that right here, Round Rock and Williamson County and Bentonville, Arkansas, are the two fastest growing small business hubs in the country. Can you kind of put that in perspective, and whatever I kind of butchered there, to just clean that up?
Well, so let's talk about Williamson County first, because that's the one that I know the best. In the SBA and the Office of Advocacy, I represent 5 states: New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and of course our beloved Texas. But let's just look at Williamson County just for a moment. If you were to take Williamson County just 6 years ago, when I started as county judge 6 years ago, the total appraised value for the county was $89.1 billion. So that's buildings like this, or every commercial, public, private building.
Dell,
everybody.
Yep.
$89 billion, which that sounds like a huge figure, right? Well, 6 years later, that same figure, are you ready for this? Is $184.4 billion. The total value of the county doubled in just 6 years. And in that same time frame, and I love this number, there were 12,558 new small businesses started. Wow. Right? And so everyone would say, well, those numbers are inflated because of Samsung, or they're inflated because of this or that. I would tell you they're not, because Samsung's not built out. The real numbers and the value, we won't see that for 2 or 3 years. Right? It is all of I call them the small mom and pop shops. It's the home builders, right?
All the services around those businesses.
Yeah. And so one of the things I learned, Brian, as county judge, is I wasn't aware of how many wraparound services it takes to support. We're the largest expansion of Apple outside of Cupertino, California, is in Williamson County, Texas.
Okay, didn't know that.
We have Dell World headquarters
Yeah.
in Williamson County, Texas. Now, my granddaughter says the most important economic development project I ever worked on was a little water park by the name of Kalahari.
Yep.
Right? And I say that tongue in cheek because
Who also stepped up and donated a significant amount, and they're not like this is not their home base, but they still stepped up with a huge donation.
and so you have like Kalahari, who's been significant. And I want to talk about them for a second because I was a part of a conversation that just really, the Nelson family is just some of the best people in the world. The tornado that came through Round Rock, I went to Kalahari to see how they were doing, and not many people talk about this story, but during the tornado, Kalahari ran everybody into their basement to protect them and save their lives. There were people that came off of 79 in there looking for a safe place. They saved people's lives. Kalahari had damage from the tornado. Not many folks know that. They were shut down for daily operations for some days, right? But when we're meeting with them, and I'm there to check on how are you doing, how are things going, Bill, who's just a wonderful vice president, said, "Hey, Judge, here's a check. We want to give to Round Rock." And I walked away from there just kind of emotionally struck that you're damaged, you're harmed. They would lose revenue for days until they could get back up on their feet. But what was their first inclination? To give and to help in the community. And we've seen Michael Dell do that. We've seen our friends do that at the Round Rock Express. We've seen Apple do that. That's just the DNA that makes us up locally.
Let's go back into your DNA a little bit. How did we go from little boy playing baseball in the fields of Sam Bass Little League to becoming a county judge?
You know, growing up in Round Rock, we didn't have a lot. We weren't wealthy. My dad had an 8th grade education, was a truck driver, and just worked tirelessly. My mom was a federal employee, worked for the government and for the Veterans Administration, and she drove a long trip every day, commuting, as many folks do. And for Bill Gravell and the Gravell family, I was the first kid in our family to go to college. And I was the first kid in the family to get a college education as well, too. And I, back in those days, there wasn't much to Round Rock. It was pretty small.
Yeah. There were donuts.
There were.
There were donuts.
And I some of the greatest days in my life was before football practice to go by and get a dozen donuts and a pint of milk. And we would eat that and then go practice. Now, at my age now, I can't do that. But those are just great memories. But I grew up locally, and I had the opportunity to leave professionally. And there was one man who really was profound in my life. His name was Ron Morrison, and his sidekick at the time was Talman Jackson. They were both high school teachers and taught vocational trade or work-related trade. And Mr. Morrison always called me Gravell, never called me Gravell, always called me Gravell. He was bald-headed. I always referred to him as old skinhead. Then he would hear me say that. Then he would get the paddle out and give me licks in school, which we no longer do that. That's considered corporal punishment. But it was exactly what Bill Gravell needed, trust me. And he said, "Gravell, you're going to have an opportunity to come back here someday and make a difference." And he said, "You owe this community." And so I heard those words, but they didn't resonate with me until my wife and I had children and we had the opportunity to come back. And I realized that this community was important to me and I wanted to get back. And there was an opportunity to serve as justice of the peace. And I served there for 6 years. I loved the role. But I'll never forget Mr. Morrison saying, "Well, Gravell, what's next?" And Ron was able to see me sworn in as Justice of the Peace, and he had passed away, and he wasn't able to see me sworn in as county judge. But I just wanted to give back to my community, and it's humbling that I get to do it locally. A few months ago, I received a call from someone in the administration after President Trump had won and said, "Hey, Bill, we really would like you to consider applying for an appointment in the administration." And I said, they don't want somebody who grew up in Round Rock, Texas to be in the administration. There's a lot better people in the world to serve. And I was quickly corrected. My wife and I talked about it, prayed about it, and submitted that initial application, and then went through multiple interviews and vetting from the White House to background checks, security background checks. I had the opportunity to meet with the administrator of the SBA, and the meeting that I had with her, this is a telling meeting, it was right before Christmas this past year. My wife and I had already decided that, if there was an opportunity we would serve, we were even willing to move to Washington. And for me, that was a sacrifice because we've got 5 grandkids in the area, right? And family matters. And Round Rock is still, it's where I grew up. Williamson County's home. Met with the administrator, and at the end of the interview, she said, "So would you like to do the job? Would you consider accepting the job?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I need to think about moving and what that looks like." And I'll never forget what Kelly said. She said, "Lord, Bill, I don't want you to move. I want you to stay right where you're at." She said, "I want you to do for the 5-state area exactly what you've done for Williamson County." She said, "If we take you away from there, it will harm you. It won't make you better." I walked out of there, got to Ronald Reagan Airport, and I called my wife and I said, "We're going to take this job." And I still get to live local. I serve, at a larger scale. And I've been to the White House on several occasions. But I'm just reminded that I'm a kid who grew up at 1402 Main Street, who got 1 pair of shoes every summer. And when your feet outgrew those shoes, you just went barefoot. It's just a reminder to me that no matter where you start, that if you're passionate and if you're focused and if you care about people, you've got to care about people and be compassionate and kind. There's no limit to where you can go in life. And serving the President of the United States has been the highest honor of my life.
You might be remembered, we'll talk about 20, 30 years from now, you might be remembered for helping bring in Samsung and some other businesses, but you're obviously super passionate about the small businesses that make up the community. And it's funny because I hear so many parallels in our stories. I had an old boss named Fred who used to tell me, "When are you going to write your book?" And back then I was still in college, and I hated reading and I hated writing. I'm like, "Fred, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "Where are you going to leave your mark?" And the fact that all these big names are what people will always remember. But the ones that truly have the impact are those small businesses, the Main Street heroes. I've worked with the Googles, I've worked with the Dells and the Disneys, but being able to work with the small businesses and really impact their lives is an amazing honor to be able to do because it really impacts them. It's not, it's just another rounding error somewhere, right? I'm curious, and you mentioned it during your meeting with us, how you now get to enjoy the impact you've had here locally, but now at a federal level.
Right.
How do you think that's going to impact the people here locally again?
So I'd like to tell you where my passion for small business came from.
Sure.
It was out of disaster. During COVID, when I locally signed the Stay Home, Stay Safe order, I knew immediately that the first thing that would happen is that it would devastate the mom and pops shops. I sat in my courthouse office on Main Street in Georgetown, and in my mind, in an imaginary way, I thought about how many businesses were going to fail because of this decision. And that bothered me. And I reached out to our treasurer at the time, Scott Hazelmeyer, and said, "Hey, Scott, we need to set up a small business recovery program. And we need to take some local funds and some of our federal funds and pump them into small businesses." And his team got to work and created Wilco Forward, which in the end ended up providing funding to some almost 3,300 small businesses in Williamson County. And I have to tell you, Brian, why that was so important to me. Those same small businesses that were suffering because we shut them down, they were still going in to prepare meals and food for Emergency Command Center.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Leanderthal, which is a distillery in Leander, Texas.
Yep.
They went in, are you ready for this?
Yeah,
For the county, and they prepared sanitizer for your hands because we couldn't buy any and we were having to onshore it, and there was no way to onshore it. And so what I saw was small businesses who did that Texas thing, and they pulled themselves up by their bootstrap, and they gave and they served in every way that they could. And we didn't save all small businesses during the global pandemic, but we saved a whole lot of them for a short time until they could stand up on their own. I hope that what I'm able to do at the federal level with cutting regulations and red tape, there won't be a view of the value of that today in Round Rock, Texas, but there will be in 5 years, in 10 years. And no one will know who was a part of that or how it occurred. But I think that's leadership. Leadership's doing the right thing and not being worried about who gets the credit for it. Yeah. Right? I think our small businesses, I think they're the heart of our economy. If you were to look at a human body, where do you put small businesses at? In Texas, people say, well, I'm not a small business. In Texas, 99.3% of all businesses are small businesses. Right? That is the heart of America. That's the heart of our economy. And that's who I get to work for every day. I get to be the voice for Main Street in Washington, D.C. I literally sat in the Eisenhower executive office talking about Williamson County, Texas, and Central Texas, and the region that I represent, able to advocate for what goes on right here. And currently we have an administration that's listening and that cares about small businesses. And so it's fun.
For our listeners who are out there and, maybe they're either in a small business or considering starting a small business, and they may have questions about, how someone like you in the advocacy office could help them. What's the best way they can go about, reaching you, asking questions? How do they navigate all this? Yeah.
So first of all, if you're out there and you're considering starting a small business, if I were you, the very first thing I would do is go and connect with my chamber. The local chamber has resources to help you evaluate your plans. And then we at the SBA have a group, the SBDCs, the Small Business Development Centers. We have one that's based in Austin, but that serves the greater region. They can help you come up with a business plan or a model that works. I really would encourage you as well, if you're looking at starting a small business, find a mentor. Right? There's some older guys around here with gray hair, I'm not pointing out anybody in particular, that have been successful, right? Trust the wisdom of the people that you have around you. One of the challenges I see, Brian, with small business owners is they often have great ideas, but they have no business experience or no business acumen or no understanding of how to start a business. The failure rate of small businesses is high. Yeah. And I think it's because proper planning isn't involved in the beginning. It's easy to get in touch with me. I've got an SBA.gov email address. It's William.Gravell, Gravell, @sba.gov. And I live right here in Central Texas.
And you frequent a lot of events. It's not like you're hard to find. We appreciate that so much, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. I just want to say to the folks of Round Rock, you've been exceptional for caring for people in the past that are walking through difficult times. Continue to do that. You've been thriving and exploding as one of the most successful business regions in the world. And I think it's because of your compassion and your ability to give. Continue to be Round Rock strong, continue to serve the community, and continue to care more about others than you care about yourself.
Well said.